The fire captain looked me dead in the eye while the flames ate my house alive. I told her to stay where she was. It was her fault she didn't listen, he said. I could still hear Amelia screaming inside. My wife, my home, my everything. And that man, Captain Grant, was standing still, arms folded, watching her burn. He didn't know who I was, or that 42 veterans from my unit were still in town. Like the video, subscribe for more betrayal twists, and comment where you're watching from, your city or your country. I never thought I'd smell my own life burning down. That thick smoke carried more than wood and paint, it carried history. The porch swing she painted blue. The walls where our wedding photos hung. Every part of our story turned to ash in minutes. I stood behind the safety tape as strangers shouted orders I'd followed my whole career, on foreign soil, but this time, I wasn't allowed to move. They held me back. "Sir, stay behind the line," one firefighter yelled, gripping my shoulder. I looked at his badge, CPT Grant. His face was calm, too calm. The kind of face I'd seen on men who'd done something wrong and learned to hide it. "Is she inside?" I asked, my voice trembling more than I wanted. He didn't even look at me. "She didn't make it." By the time we got here, the flames were too strong. The word didn't echo in my head. I tried to run forward, but 2 firefighters blocked me. The roof collapsed with a crack so loud it froze everyone. Inside that sound, I imagined her scream. The fire was declared under control 43 minutes later. But the job was too clean, too finished. Something was off. I'd seen chaos before, but this looked choreographed. When the fire cooled, they brought her body out on a stretcher. A silver sheet hid everything except her ringed hand, the same hand I kissed every time before deployment. I dropped to my knees right there, in the mud, surrounded by strangers. Someone whispered, "That's her husband." Another said softly, "Her guy just got back from service." I didn't hear much after that. Later that night, the fire chief took my statement. I told him what I saw, the delay, the calmness, the way Captain Grant called her careless, like he'd been waiting to say it. The chief gave me that pitying look, the one people give soldiers who've already lost too much. Sometimes people panic. Fires spread unpredictably, he said. Unpredictably. That word stuck with me. When I got home, well, what was left of it? The street was cordoned off. I sat on the curb as the coroner's van pulled away. A neighbor, Fiona, brought me a blanket I didn't want. She said, "Amelia called 911 3 times before the line went dead." 3 times. "Did you hear anything before that?" I asked her. Fiona hesitated. "A truck. I saw a fire truck parked a few houses down before the fire even started. I thought maybe it was a drill. A truck before the fire." That night, I walked along the ashes until dawn. Nothing left but nails, steel, and memories. That's when I saw it. Amelia's car, hidden behind the trees near the creek, untouched by fire. Her purse was inside, her phone missing. I opened the glove box. Her perfume still filled the air. That was when I saw the folded motel receipt. Printed name at the top, Mason Lodge Inn, timestamp 2 hours before the fire. Amelia wasn't home when it started. She came back that night. Whoever set that fire expected her to be inside. The noise in my head wouldn't stop. It wasn't just grief, it was a calculation. A soldier's instinct putting pieces where they belonged. Captain Grant's truck. His calm face. The missing phone. Her late return. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. The next day, the department called it an unfortunate case of house fire caused by faulty wiring. Quick verdict. Too quick. I went to the firehouse to retrieve Amelia's locket from evidence. Captain Grant was there, drinking coffee, talking like it was a normal day. "Captain," I said quietly, standing in the doorway. He turned. "Mr. Logan, I'm sorry for your loss." "It's a tragedy," he started, but that fake sympathy voice gave him away. I cut him off. "You were there before the sirens." He froze for a second. Then that smug smirk crept across his face. You can't imagine how fast fire spreads. Sometimes people make poor choices in panic. "People," I said. "You mean my wife?" He shrugged, walked closer, lowered his voice. She ran back inside, said she forgot something. I warned her. What happens after that wasn't on me. I felt the blood rush to my temples. The man knew what he was implying. He was taunting me. I clenched my fists but didn't swing. The military teaches restraint, not rage. Still, every second felt like a countdown. Before leaving, I looked around the station. The same station that was supposed to save lives. On the board was a response timeline chart, times handwritten, not digitally logged. My shoulder instinctively tensed. Handwritten logs can be faked. When I turned back, Captain Grant was leaning against the truck, eyes watching me too long, like he knew what I'd just realized. I walked out instead of breaking him. I needed proof, not prison. On the way out, I called Victor, my old comrade from deployment. He picked up instantly. Logan? Been months, brother. You okay? No, I said quietly. But I think someone needs to be reminded who we are. He didn't ask for details. He just said what we always said when the mission turned personal. Then let's gather the unit. That night, while everyone else slept, I went through Amelia's old messages. The ones the fire didn't erase, because she'd backed up her phone to the cloud. And there it was. Hundreds of texts. From someone saved only as G. The last one read, "It's done. Don't tell him yet." I stared at those words until the dawn bled through the smoke in the sky. Maybe G meant Grant. Maybe it didn't. But whoever G was, they were with her the night she died. And that was enough reason for me to start a war of a different kind. I didn't sleep for 2 days after I found those messages. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Amelia's hand under that silver sheet and the name, G, glowing on her phone screen. It wasn't just betrayal now. It was murder wearing a uniform. I sat in my truck outside the burned shell of our house, replaying the last few weeks before I left for deployment. How distant she'd grown. The late-night texts. The cold hugs. I'd blamed myself for being gone too long, thinking she was just lonely. But now, loneliness doesn't sound like the kind of thing that burns a house down. I pulled out my notebook, the same one I used for field reports overseas, and started my own version of a military operation. Objective: find out who G is. Threat: evidence tampering by Fire Captain Grant. Goal: truth before justice. I drove to the motel named on the receipt, Mason Lodge Inn. The clerk at the front desk, a woman named Ruby, recognized the picture I showed her. She was here that night, Ruby said quietly. Checked in around 10:30. Room 12. She wasn't alone. My stomach dropped. Ruby hesitated before continuing. There was a man with her. Mid-40s, broad-shouldered, wearing a fire department jacket. I remember because he kept saying he was on call. Grant. It had to be him. I stepped back, keeping my voice steady. Did you see them leave? She nodded. She stormed out first, crying. He drove off 10 minutes later. I thought they were a married couple fighting. Didn't know her name until I saw the news. That single sentence hit like shrapnel. Amelia walked out crying. Meaning, she was alive and outside before the fire started. That meant the blaze began after their argument, which meant someone wanted to erase all evidence of that night. On my way home, I called Victor again. He listened silently as I told him what I'd found. When I finished, he said, "Then it's time we start digging deeper, brother. We don't hit back, we build the case." Victor had connections, men who'd moved into law enforcement, insurance, private security. Within hours, one of them, Harper, a fire investigation consultant, called me. We met at a diner off the interstate, quiet, half empty. She introduced herself like she'd been expecting me. "I've read the department report," Harper said, sliding a thin folder across the table. "And it's garbage. Times don't line up." The first 911 call came in at 10:52. The first engine left the station at 10:57. But the fire was already full-blown by 10:55. That's not possible. I opened the file, photos of burn patterns, timestamps, aerial footage. Every piece pointed to one thing. Delay. A controlled delay. "Someone stalled," I said. She nodded. Someone with override access to dispatch. Only a captain or a chief could do that. My breath stayed steady, but my pulse was hammering. Grant. I can't say it on record yet, Harper said cautiously. But off the record, yeah, it fits. She pushed her coffee aside. You want the truth, I'll help you get it. But understand something. Going after a decorated fire captain without undeniable proof? That's like lighting another match. I've faced worse fires, I said. She smiled faintly. I bet you have. That night, I reviewed every piece of footage again. In one frame from a neighbor's door cam, just seconds before the blaze erupted, a light-colored pickup idled across the street. License plate blurred by reflection. But I knew that silhouette, the same model Grant drove. I sent a copy to Victor. He replied with 2 words, lock it down. The next morning, I went to the local department pretending to file an insurance form, but instead, I scanned the response log behind the clerk's desk. Time entries didn't make sense. 10:55 call logged before 10:52 dispatch. Handwriting didn't match the chief's signature either. Forgery. Behind me, a voice said, "Need help with something, Mr. Logan?" It was Grant. He looked almost amused. Still obsessed with the fire? I turned, just trying to understand why my wife died waiting for help. He narrowed his eyes. You think you can play detective because you wore a uniform once? I don't play detective, I said quietly. I hunt truth. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Truth won't bring her back. Sometimes it's better to accept fate than dig graves you can't fill. For a moment I thought he might actually break the mask and admit something, but instead, he smirked and walked off. After he left, I slipped outside and texted Harper. He's onto us. Her reply came fast. Be careful. Internal affairs might already be covering for him. That night, as I sat alone at my temporary apartment, I heard a car stop outside. Footsteps. A knock. I froze, hand instinctively near the drawer where my old dog tags rested. I opened the door. No one. Just an envelope at my feet. Inside was a note on fire department letterhead. Stop asking questions if you want peace. Some fires should stay buried. That sentence wasn't a threat. It was a confession. Somebody inside the department knew what Grant did. I stared at it under the yellow lamp, realizing the magnitude of what I was up against. These weren't just lies. They were walls built by people who thought they'd never be caught. I folded the note carefully and tucked it in my notebook. Evidence. By morning, Victor had gathered 3 more veterans from our old unit, all stationed nearby. They didn't need explanations, just purpose. We met at a quiet garage on the edge of town, turning grief into resolve. We're not breaking laws, I told them. We're finding proof. Victor nodded. And when we find it, then we make sure everyone sees. I didn't need vengeance. I needed exposure. The kind that leaves no one able to look away. That same afternoon, Harper called again. Her voice was tense. I ran Amelia's phone records from the network provider. There's something you need to see. 5 new numbers after 9 p.m. the night of the fire, all outgoing. One was Grant's. The others were from Fire Station 7, including the chief's office landline. Someone covered each other's calls, she said. That means the chain goes higher than Grant. For a long time, I said nothing. Then I asked, do you think she tried to warn them? Or blackmail him? Harper hesitated. Her last voicemail was never deleted from the system. You should hear it yourself. She sent me the file. The voice that came through cracked with fear. Grant, please don't do this. I'll tell him. I swear, I'll tell Logan the truth tonight. Just don't come here. Then silence. A click. End of recording. Timestamp. 10:47 p.m. 5 minutes before the first 911 call. Everything inside me went still. She was going to come clean. She was ending it. That's why he made sure she never could. It wasn't just betrayal now. It was execution. I looked at the ashes through the window, the same spot where we once planted a small oak tree together. Only the stump remained. All right, Grant, I whispered. You called it her fault. Let's see how fault looks when the truth catches fire. The more I listened to Amelia's last voicemail, the more my hands trembled, not from anger, but disbelief. Her voice wasn't that of a stranger or a liar. It was scared, desperate, still hoping someone would listen before everything exploded. I played it again. Each breath, each pause, every second screamed that Grant wasn't just a bystander. He was the reason the fire existed. That morning, Victor called. I tracked down one of the junior firefighters who was on shift that night, he said. Guy's name is Kyle. Fresh kid, still haunted by it. He agreed to talk if we meet somewhere quiet. We met Kyle at a riverside park far from town. He looked barely 20, shoulders hunched like he already regretted speaking up. I can't be seen with you, Kyle whispered fiercely. They'll end me if they find out. I stayed calm. We don't need names, just truth. He swallowed hard. Captain Grant told us to wait. He said the gas line could blow, that we needed to hold position. But when I looked through the flames, I saw someone at the window. She was still moving. I yelled to go in, but he stopped me. Stopped him. Kyle wiped his face. Next day, he ordered us to say the structure was fully consumed when we arrived. He even wrote the report himself. I didn't sign it. He forged my initials. I looked straight at Victor. That was it. Confirmation from inside. Before leaving, I asked Kyle one last question. Why tell us now? He glanced toward the water. Because I can't sleep. And because what he did wasn't hero work. He left quickly, his guilt trailing behind him like smoke. Later that day, Victor texted me a street camera clip. Grant's truck near the motel's exit the night of the fire. No sirens, no emergency lights, just him, parked, waiting. That video, combined with Amelia's voicemail, built a picture that was no longer blurry. Grant wasn't negligent. He was personal. But I needed more than suspicion. I needed the system to turn on itself. Harper, the investigator, agreed to meet again. This time, she brought someone new. Clara, an independent forensic expert. Clara studied the case files in silence before saying, Your wife's house didn't catch from faulty wires. It caught from accelerant, gasoline, spread evenly near the front entry. Whoever said it planned for her to get trapped inside. She turned the photo toward me, marked with burn flow patterns. That's intentional ignition. You can't mistake the pattern. So you can prove it? I asked quietly. Clara frowned. Proving it is one thing. Getting anyone in that department to back it officially? That's political suicide. I leaned forward. What about a private lab? Chain of custody controlled by us. She looked at Harper, then back at me. You really want to risk your life chasing a killer with a badge? Risking my life's never been the problem, I said. It's the doing nothing part that kills me. That small line seemed to change something. Clara nodded. All right, I'll run it discreetly. Give me 48 hours. As she walked away, Harper said softly, You know Grant won't stay quiet once he feels the walls closing in. I'm counting on that, I replied. That night, guilt twisted inside me. Between each heartbeat, I kept asking one question. Why Amelia? Why didn't she just tell me the truth sooner? I searched her backed-up emails. Buried deep, one draft stood out. Unsent, dated the day before she died. It read, Logan, I made a mistake. I thought it was love. I just needed someone who understood me while you were gone. But I see who he really is now. I'm ending it. We need to talk. The words burned worse than the fire ever could. She'd been trying to leave him, and that's what signed her death sentence. Morning sunlight bled through the blinds when my phone buzzed. Victor again. Clara called. Results are in. We met her in an abandoned storage lot on the outskirts. Her paranoia matched ours now. She held a folder tight to her chest. The residue samples? 90% match with departmental gasoline reserves. The same type used in fire trucks. Victor blinked. He used his own department's fuel? Clara nodded. He either thought nobody would test it, or someone inside was protecting him. That was the moment I realized my war wasn't against one man anymore. It was against a system built to hide him. That night, someone tailgated me for 10 straight miles. I turned down side roads. The car followed. I eventually pulled over hard and stepped out, ready. But the car kept driving. just long enough to let me know they knew where I lived. The next morning, my garbage can had been flipped. Inside, a burned fragment of Amelia's wedding photo. The rest had melted, but Grant's hand on her shoulder was still visible. Message received. Later, I met Harper again. She'd gone through the dispatch records deeper this time. You were right, she said. The logs were rewritten 12 hours after the fire, timestamp altered manually. And the authorization password used belonged to Grant. But get this, it was approved by his superior officer, Chief Blake. Blake, I repeated, which means your wife's death isn't just personal. It's institutional. That night, the veterans began streaming in, men I hadn't seen in years. They came without being asked twice. They understood what this was. Victor set a folder on the table filled with everything we had so far. The voicemail, the motel footage, the report forgeries, the gasoline evidence. Proof strong enough to whisper, not shout, but whisper loud enough in the right ears, and truth spreads like flame. You sure about going public yet? Victor asked me. Because after this, no one's walking away untouched. I stared at the folder for a while before answering. He said she didn't listen. Let's make sure everyone else finally does. That night, I sat alone at the creek where Amelia's car was found. The water reflected the stars, calm and cruel. I placed her wedding ring in my palm, cold as stone. She tried to come clean, I said aloud. But you buried her truth with your lies, Grant. Now I'll burn your silence instead. The night after we compiled the evidence, I couldn't shake the sound of her last voicemail. I'll tell him tonight. Those words haunted every breath. I realized I couldn't do this alone anymore, not against uniforms protecting one of their own. So I called the men who never left me behind, the 42 veterans who still called each other brothers. Victor took the lead gathering them. By noon the next day, a dozen trucks lined the edge of a rural training field outside town. The same field where we'd learned how to move in silence. The same kind of silence now surrounding Amelia's death. When they saw me step out, every conversation stopped. These weren't soldiers anymore. They were fathers, mechanics, cops, teachers. But the look in their eyes hadn't changed. They stood waiting for orders without asking why. Victor handed me coffee that smelled half gasoline, half loyalty. You tell us what's next, he said. I looked around the group. No rage. No crime. We do this clean. We expose them, not destroy them. There's already enough fire in this story. Hunter, one of the younger vets, asked, You got a plan or just faith? I've got facts, I said. And the truth, once seen, spreads faster than flames. We broke into teams, one to trace Grant's finances, one to track his communications, another to protect the whistleblowers like Kyle and Clara. This wasn't revenge. It was containment. Victor opened his laptop on the hood of his truck, screens lighting his scarred face. Grant's bank activity went dark right after the fire. But 3 weeks earlier, a transfer came from the firemen's benevolent fund. 15 grand redirected through the chief's office. Guess who signed it? Blake, I said instantly. Yeah. Paperwork masked as bonus pay. The dots were no longer dots. They were a picture taking shape, bribery, silence, and cover-up funded by the same people sworn to protect lives. Meanwhile, Harper and Clara worked quietly, preparing a sealed report. She called me one evening, her voice sharper than usual. There's something you should see, she said. Blake approved a falsified dispatch manual the month before the fire. Allows captains discretionary, wait commands under risk of explosion. It's the clause Grant used to justify standing down. It's also the clause that saved Blake's career every time the department delayed response. Hidden policies. Convenient paper shields. Everything about this city's hero system was rotting from inside. That night, I walked into the old firehouse alone. They still kept Amelia's case files locked in a cabinet marked closed, unintentional. I picked the lock like I'd been trained to decades ago, quietly, cleanly. Inside, the photos stared back at me. The staircase fully intact, meaning she'd had a clear escape path before it collapsed. She didn't die because she panicked. The fire intensified too fast, almost like fuel-fed combustion. Footsteps sounded behind me. I froze. A voice said softly, "You can't let this go, can you?" It was Clara. She'd followed me. "I needed proof of her last position," I said. "You already have enough," she whispered. "Walk away before they notice you here." I closed the file drawer. People like Grant count on silence. That's why none of this ever stops. Her expression softened. "You think you can beat an entire department? I know I can expose them." "That's enough." She sighed, but handed me an envelope. Harper finished her independent report. Accelerant concentration, ignition point, and timeline, all pointing to deliberate ignition from outside the structure. "You'll need this soon." I didn't realize how soon until the next morning, when Blake himself knocked on my door. He looked polished, calm, too assured for a man under suspicion. "Mr. Logan," he said, "I'd like to extend condolences, belated maybe, but sincere." "Condolences don't erase lies," I said. He smiled faintly. "Careful what fires you start digging in. You might not like what burns next." Then he tucked a business card in my mailbox and left. No threats, no witnesses, just that quiet arrogance men show when they believe they own the system. By sunset, word spread that Internal Affairs would review the case, a move meant to bury it officially. Harper confirmed they'd assigned it to one of Blake's protégés. It was theater, not justice. I met Victor by the docks, told him what happened. He stared at the reflection of lights dancing on the water. "So what's the play?" "Exposure," I said. "Public, undeniable, live." We planned an event under the guise of a memorial for fallen families, scheduled 2 weeks later. A tribute to victims of domestic fires, sponsored by veterans and first responders. The perfect cover to confront the department without warning. Each of the 42 brothers had roles. Camera crews disguised as press, audio techs, volunteers. Harper and Clara would handle evidence release to multiple outlets at once. For days, tension hummed like an electric current. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured her voice. "I'll tell him tonight." If she'd only had 5 more minutes. Now, her story would have those minutes back. 3 nights before the event, Hunter called me from surveillance near Grant's house. He's been meeting Blake privately. Midnight drives, unmarked lot near Station 7. What do they discuss? Can't hear much. But Grant looked nervous. Blake's calm as ice. He's protecting him for now, but something's cracking. And it did crack. The following evening, Kyle, the junior firefighter, texted me from an unknown number. "They know Harper's helping you. She might be in danger." I drove straight to her place. The lights were off, but the door was open. Inside, papers scattered everywhere, but she was gone. My pulse raced until my phone buzzed again. Her message, "I'm safe." They tried to scare me. Didn't work. Get ready for the memorial. Relief hit like air after smoke. We were ready. Morally clean. Digitally armed. Every lie they'd crafted was now time-stamped and traceable. As we prepared, Victor stood beside me, checking the lineup. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" he said. "Fighting fire with cameras instead of rifles." I gave a small smile. Different weapons. Same purpose, truth. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, rain coming fast. It felt symbolic, the storm before cleansing. I looked out over the empty field, turning muddy, feeling Amelia's ring in my pocket. 2 weeks, I whispered. Then your voice will finally be heard. None of us noticed the black SUV parked at the ridge, engine idling, windows tinted. But someone was watching, because the next morning, Grant's personal statement was all over the news. Hero fire captain threatened by deranged veteran claiming conspiracy. He wanted to paint me as unstable. It was his preemptive strike. Victor tossed the newspaper onto the table. "He's nervous." That's good. But I knew better. Nervous men fight dirty. Still, the plan wouldn't change. The memorial was coming, and with it, the truth no one could unsee. The morning news painted me as a madman. Unstable veteran harassing first responders. The words crawled across the screen while my coffee went cold. Grant's charm worked again. People loved their heroes. No one questioned how a man so calm could watch someone die. Victor called. "You good?" "Yeah," I said, though the knot in my chest said otherwise. "Staying quiet for now." "Then stay quiet," he warned, "until we drop the footage." That afternoon, Clara called, voice low like someone nearby could be listening. "We found something you need to see in the security archives. It's bad." Within the hour, I met her and Harper in the narrow basement of an old courthouse where Harper had access to archived footage from the fire department network. The room smelled of dust and forgotten truths. Clara plugged in an external drive, eyes flicking toward me. "This camera was mounted on a utility pole across from your house," she said. "No one checked it because it belonged to the county, not the department." She hit play. Static. Then grainy color showed my neighborhood that night. 10:41 p.m., a faint glow from our porch light. Then, at 10:46, a truck pulled into frame, silver body, fire department decals blurred by darkness. A man stepped out. Bulkier than Amelia, posture too familiar. Grant. He moved fast, around the side of the house. One flash of light, then smoke. Seconds later, he walked back to the truck, hands in pockets, and waited. 10 minutes later, Amelia's headlights appeared. She ran toward the home, froze, turned to shout at someone outside frame, then ran inside. The blaze exploded behind her. The video froze on Grant's silhouette watching from the curb. I couldn't breathe. Harper whispered, "It gets worse." She advanced the footage. 5 minutes later, another man appeared near the truck, motioning furiously at Grant. "Chief Blake." Grant handed him something, small and metallic. Blake pocketed it and left in a black sedan. That was the device used to alter dispatch logs. Evidence traded right there on camera. Harper said quietly, "If this goes live, the department burns from top to bottom." I stared at the screen, jaw set. Then that's what happens. For a while, silence filled the basement. Only the hum of the old computer. Clara finally said, "You wanted undeniable proof. Now you have it." Victor merged the frames into a clean timeline overnight. I spent that night sitting in my truck outside the same burned shell of my house, laptop screen lighting my face. Watching again and again couldn't numb it. I was watching my wife die while men in uniform stood yards away. Somewhere between disbelief and rage, the tears came. The kind that don't make noise, just ache. At dawn, rain started to fall. It hissed softly on the coals where our oak tree used to stand. The smell of wet ash wrapped around me like memory. When I met Victor later that morning, he slid me a phone. Brothers are set. Every news outlet, every social channel scheduled to mirror the memorial feed. All it takes is one upload. "Good," I said. Then no turning back. The memorial was 2 days away. The veterans rehearsed logistics like old mission drills. Press handling, live stream triggers, evidence backups off-site. Each man worked silently, but with the same grim focus we carried in combat. That night, Clara called again, panicked. They broke into my lab. I could hear shattering glass through the phone. "They're taking the drives. Call for help," I shouted. She whispered, already backing up to the cloud. "Find Harper. She'll know where." The call cut. We tried calling back. No answer. Hours later, Harper texted, "Clara's safe." They failed. Data secure. Next morning, the town paper ran an article. Fire investigation expert under scrutiny for breach of confidential files. They were trying to bury her in bureaucracy before she could speak. But they were too late. Victor had already received the backup. He grinned slightly. We beat their clock. Then his face hardened again. "Still, they'll come for us next." The Memorial Day arrived gray and heavy. Rain clouds swelled, thunder muttering far away like approval. Town square filled with folding chairs, flags, candles, and families wearing fire department shirts. Grant and Blake sat front row, faces straight for the cameras. When I stepped onto the stage, silence fell. I looked over the crowd. Neighbors, colleagues, strangers. My voice trembled for a breath before finding its edge. My name's Logan, I said, and my wife, Amelia, died waiting for help that never came. A hush rippled through the crowd. Blake's jaw tightened. I continued. She called for rescue 3 times. The men she trusted stood outside. They said it was her fault. Grant shifted uncomfortably. I saw the twitch of his hand, the same one that tossed fuel. Tonight, I said softly, we remember all the victims of neglect, not just the ones who get statues. Behind me, Victor stood by the projector, hand hovering over the trigger. I nodded. The screen lit up. Gasps moved through the audience as grainy footage played. The truck, the ignition flash, Amelia running inside, Grant waiting, Blake's arrival. Grant jumped from his chair. Turn that off. That's fake, he shouted. Cameras flashed. Reporters surged forward. Blake reached for his phone, calling someone. Too late. Victor locked eyes with me, then pushed the feed live across every social network simultaneously. Within minutes, comments, viewers, and reporters swarmed. Grant tried to rush the stage, yelling my name, but officers, ones from outside the department, were already pushing through the crowd. Harper had sent the video directly to the State Bureau 15 minutes earlier. 2 plainclothes agents stepped up, badges flashing. Captain Grant, Chief Blake, please come with us. The crowd erupted. Anger, disbelief, confusion, a wave of noise that felt heavier than any battlefield I'd survived. Grant's face twisted, somewhere between fear and hate. You think this makes you a hero? He hissed at me as they cuffed him. I'm not the hero, I said. She was. For a moment, thunder smashed overhead, drowning everything. Rain began to pour, washing soot, lies, and old sorrow all at once. When the agents led them away, the only thing I felt was relief. Not joy, not vengeance, just silence, cleaner than smoke. Hours later, the square emptied, leaving candles melting under rain. Victor walked up, soaked. It's done. They're both in custody. The world saw. I looked at Amelia's photo on the memorial wall, water streaking down her smile. Then she finally got the help she asked for. But deep down, I knew it wasn't truly over. Institutions don't crumble overnight. Someone must have signed every look-away memo, every erased log. The chain had more links, hidden ones. I turned to Victor. Blake and Grant were pieces. Let's find the hand that moved them. He nodded slowly. Then this war's not over. I looked one last time at the drenched crowd dispersing under dim lights. No cheers, no applause, just quiet reckoning. The kind you feel when truth finally breathes again. Rain didn't stop for 2 days after the memorial. The whole town woke to headlines screaming names they'd once honored. Grant and Blake were suspended, photos and handcuffs plastered everywhere. But victory tasted hollow. Every time lightning cracked over the hills, I pictured Amelia's last look through smoke. The Bureau promised full investigation. I'd heard promises before. They go quiet once cameras pack up. Victor and I sat in his truck outside the courthouse, windshield fogged. They'll try to spin this like isolated corruption, he said. 2 bad apples, not the orchard. Then we burned down the orchard, I answered. He gave a small grin. Quietly, though. That became our plan. Quiet revenge through truth. Not with fists, but evidence the system couldn't bury. Harper met us that night in a closed diner booth. Her eyes looked hollow. Weeks of running, hiding, and threats had worn her thin. Internal affairs cut a deal with Blake, she whispered. He's blaming Grant for everything in exchange for departmental immunity. Victor swore under his breath. I stayed silent, waiting. Harper slid a flash drive across the table. Clara found more. Bank logs. Blake's payouts went higher. There's a name we didn't expect. The file name glowed blue on the laptop. Deputy Commissioner Ryder. The same official who led the firefighters' charity fund, and who signed the city's commendation for Grant 2 weeks after Amelia's death. Harper leaned forward. Ryder funneled cash through retirement stipends. He used the charity to cover bonus transfers. but one of the invoices came from insurance claim adjustments. That's your wife's policy. My pulse slowed, cold dread replacing anger. He got money from her death? Exactly. 25,000, routed through departmental expense accounts. Paper trail hidden, but recoverable. Victor closed the laptop slowly. Then our quiet revenge gets louder. We moved operations to an unused veterans hangar near the airfield. Remote, secure. The men worked shifts uploading every shred of data onto mirror drives. Clara joined us again, bruised from her lab break-in, but determined. Truth's like oxygen, she said while syncing files. The harder they try to choke it, the faster it spreads. At night, I paced the empty runway, rain slick on concrete, wind cutting through my jacket. I kept hearing Amelia's line in that voicemail. I'll tell him the truth tonight. She died trying to do what we were doing now. 2 nights in, Harper called. Ryder's arranging a press conference to address community concerns. He's going to bury the scandal under paperwork. I smiled thinly. Then we stage our own press conference first. Victor raised an eyebrow. You planning to hijack his? Not hijack. Mirror it. We coordinated with veteran tech crews to livestream Ryder's speech side by side, with files proving every transfer, every falsified statement, and the video of Blake accepting hush payouts. Silence wasn't our weapon anymore. Timing was. Meanwhile, small details began haunting me. Grant's smirk during the memorial replay. Blake's confident stillness. It didn't fit the panic of men trapped. Harper noticed it too. They looked too composed, she said. Maybe because someone promised protection if they took the fall. Ryder, I said. He'll turn them into scapegoats and save himself. We needed him to confess without realizing he was confessing. The conference day came fast. The courthouse steps filled with reporters under gray clouds again. Ryder stepped up to the podium, polished voice carrying rehearsed remorse. We grieve the losses, and we will restore faith in this department. Halfway through his statement, Victor sent me a tight nod and tapped enter. Across every live feed, the split screen appeared, Ryder's face on one side, our evidence reel on the other. Grant at the burn site, Blake taking envelopes, invoices naming Ryder, payment records tied to Amelia Logan insurance claim, #0945. The crowd noise turned electric. Reporters yelled questions. Ryder froze mid-sentence, eyes darting to aides. He tried to keep control. These images are fabricated, manipulated by bitter individuals seeking. Then Harper, standing with the press, raised her voice sharply. Sir, those files came from your department's own encrypted servers. Would you like to deny the transaction IDs? For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he stepped back from the podium, mic still live. Shut it down, he hissed to someone off camera. The words echoed through every broadcast mic in town. That's when the agents moved in. The same state bureau that had once promised patience. Only now, with thousands watching, they had no choice. Victor whispered beside me. Checkmate. Ryder was escorted off stage, shouting about doctored files and conspiracies, but nobody listened. People had already seen the truth. That night, the hangar felt different, still tense, but lighter somehow. The veterans gathered around an old space heater, drinking soda instead of whiskey, the laughter rough, but real. Victor looked at me across the glow. You did it, brother. She got her truth. I nodded but didn't smile. Truth's not revenge. It's just the first breath after drowning. He tossed me a folded note. Harper dropped this before she left. I opened it. Inside were Amelia's final autopsy addendum, stamped and signed after the case reopened. Cause of death, smoke inhalation. Time to incapacitation, 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That's how long she'd waited while Grant stood outside. 7 minutes that rewrote what justice meant to me. A week later, the city council voted to dissolve the current fire administration. New leadership, full reform, a monument to those failed by negligence. They asked if I'd attend the ceremony. I declined. That stage didn't belong to me. Instead, I visited the rebuilt foundation of our old house, now fenced off for reconstruction. The soil still smelled faintly of char. I pressed Amelia's ring into the dirt under the infant oak sprouting again where the old tree had burned. Quiet revenge, I murmured. Yours, not mine. The wind carried faint laughter from kids playing down the road, the first peaceful sound in months. As I turned to leave, Victor's truck rumbled up. You sure you're done? He asked. Done with fire, I said, but not with memory. He handed me a thumb drive copy of every document we'd gathered. For archives, he said, in case they ever forget. I slipped it into my jacket. They won't. For the first time since Amelia's scream, I felt something close to quiet, not the hollow kind, but the kind earned through storms survived. We drove away in silence. Behind us, the small oak swayed under sunlight, alive, defiant. The city didn't sleep after Ryder's arrest. News vans lined every block outside the fire headquarters. Reporters shouted questions that no one answered. For the first time, the silence belonged to them, not me. But even with arrests and investigations spreading like wildfire, I couldn't rest. Justice can make headlines. Peace takes longer. A week later, the mayor called for a public memorial to honor all who perished in service failures and restore faith in the fire department. Public relations dressed as grief. Yet Harper thought it was the perfect moment to end every lie still smoldering beneath the surface. That morning, gray dawn hung over the city like smoke refusing to lift. Victor and I arrived early. 42 veterans again stood scattered through the crowd, blending into volunteers and security. Their stance wasn't military now. It was protective, quiet guardianship. Across the lawn, the rebuilt memorial wall shimmered with rain and engraved names. Near the bottom, Amelia Logan. I ran my fingers across the letters, cold steel biting skin. Feels strange, Victor said softly behind me. Seeing her name where heroes belong. She earned it, I whispered. The ceremony began. The new interim fire chief stepped to the microphone, voice cracked from fatigue. We gather to heal, to remember those we failed. Behind him, Grant appeared under guard, wrists free but presence heavy. He was out temporarily, cooperation in exchange for testimony against Blake and Ryder. His gaze roamed the crowd like a scavenger searching for vulnerability. Harper nudged me. You ready for what he's going to say? Grant had agreed to speak publicly as part of his plea, supposedly to apologize. I didn't believe a word of it. He took the stage, dressed in civilian clothes. The crowd hushed. I was part of a system that lost its way, he began, voice low. The night Mrs. Logan died, I made decisions I'll regret forever. I froze. Fear, misjudgment, call it what you want. Fear. He was rebranding murder into panic. Her husband, Logan, he deserves forgiveness more than I deserve mercy. He looked straight at me then, eyes hollow, voice practiced. I'm sorry for your loss. The audience murmured. Reporters scribbled. It sounded perfect to everyone who hadn't watched the tape. Harper whispered, he's playing for sympathy before sentencing. Let him, I said, because sympathy doesn't erase evidence. When his speech ended, the mayor tried closing the event, but Victor stepped onto the edge of the platform, holding his phone up. Livestream rolling. He gestured to me quietly. I stepped forward, one foot on the step, and spoke before anyone could stop me. I served overseas 12 years, I said, loud enough to carry. I've seen men die brave, and I've seen men die betrayed. My wife died believing the people outside her home were there to save her. The crowd froze. Grant's head lowered slightly. I continued. We already know who lit the fire. But nobody's asking who watched it burn from above. Who gave the orders? Who wrote the rules that let people choose when a life was worth saving? The interim chief shifted uncomfortably. Then, without warning, a voice from near the back shouted, Tell them everything, Grant. Everyone turned. Kyle, the young firefighter, had stood up, shaking. Tell them you weren't alone that night. Grant's face blanched. He shouted, "Sit down," but it was too late. Harper's phone buzzed. A notification popped up on every projector screen surrounding the square, an anonymous upload. Video, new footage, clearer than anything before. Security feed from the station locker room that same night. Grant and Blake arguing. Blake yelling, "You already said it. She's inside." The clip ended there, but it was enough. The square erupted. Crowd noise rose into chaos. Media flashing, officers pushing between lines. Grant tried stepping down, but detectives moved fast, rearresting him on sight. His apology evaporated in the roar. Amid the storm, Harper leaned toward me. That footage came from Blake's confiscated drive. Somebody leaked it ahead of schedule. Who? I asked. She looked stunned. Clara's account upload tag. But she died 2 nights ago in that car crash outside the city. Silence slammed through me. Clara gone? Just when truth finally breathed, it stole one of its own. I stepped back from the stage, rain beginning to fall again, steady, relentless. I couldn't hear the speeches or the sirens. Only that low hum grief leaves behind. Victor found me later under the awning. She must have timed the upload before leaving for that drive, he said. Probably knew they were following her. She finished what she started, I murmured. She made sure it would never die with her. We stood there watching reporters swarm the police vehicles taking Grant away. The veterans didn't cheer. They just stood in collective stillness, shoulders heavy. Justice looks quieter than movies make it. By nightfall, the memorial square had emptied except for soaking candles and fallen flags. I stayed long past when I should have left, watching raindrops slide down Amelia's name again. I whispered, "It's over, right?" But the wind offered no answer. Later, Victor joined me in the truck. The radio murmured updates. Multiple new subpoenas issued. Cover-up suspected at state level. He looked at me. There's still somebody higher. I nodded. There always is. Harper texted then. Ryder's testimony points to a private insurance consultant who funded the payout scheme. Name unidentified. Follow the money trail. Final puzzle piece. Victor leaned back, exhaling. You ready for another round? I've got 7 minutes of silence to repay, I said. We drove off through streets shining black with rain, city lights reflecting in the puddles like little fires refusing to die. The war wasn't with guns anymore. It was with corruption, silence, and the ghosts people pretend not to see. And somewhere, deep in that silence, I could almost hear Amelia's voice again. Calm, steady, unafraid. Finish it, Logan. The morning after the memorial, the city felt different, like a wound exposed to sunlight. Everyone had seen the footage. Every station aired it in loops, every feed filled with disbelief. Decorated fire captain involved in arson cover-up. Grant's face was everywhere. He didn't look like a savior anymore. He looked like a man finally cornered. Victor and I sat in my truck outside the county courthouse as reporters flooded the steps. He scrolled through headlines. They're cutting Blake a deal. He's testifying against Ryder, saying the commissioner ordered delays to protect funding kickbacks. And Grant? I asked. He's refusing plea talks. Keeps saying Amelia's death was a tragic accident. I clenched my jaw. Accidents don't have bank transfers and blackmail trails. Inside the courthouse, Grant's hearing unfolded like theater for the masses. He arrived in cuffs, escorted by guards, avoiding every camera flash. But when he sat at the table opposite the prosecutor, I caught something. His calm again, that same casual arrogance. Harper joined us in the back row. He's not nervous, she whispered, which means he thinks there's more to shield him. As the judge read the charges, Grant leaned toward his lawyer and smirked. The gesture, small but familiar, made bile rise in my throat. I'd seen the same face staring at the flames outside my house. The prosecutor presented evidence, footage, financials, logs, but Grant's lawyer twisted everything into procedural jargon, data integrity, timeline discrepancies, chain of custody challenges. At recess, Harper whispered, if they keep arguing technicalities, this could drag for months. Then we bring emotion where data fails, I said. That afternoon, Grant testified. Voice smooth. Words rehearsed. I made mistakes. I panicked. But I never intended harm. Mrs. Logan ran back inside. She didn't trust the fire crew. I tried to save her. Gasps rippled through the room. He was twisting the narrative again, making her sound irrational, reckless. I stood before the judge could stop me. She ran back inside because you were outside, I said. Because she thought you'd help her once she called your name. The judge ordered silence, but Grant had already flinched at my words. That tiny break in his mask told me the truth. Guilt was creeping in. The court adjourned early. Outside, reporters swarmed for comments. I kept walking. Victor shielded me from cameras. Harper whispered, "Tomorrow we'll get him cornered in cross-examination. But there's something else you should know." She handed me a sealed envelope. Forensics from Clara's last auto inspection. Her brakes were cut. It wasn't an accident. I froze mid-step. "You're sure?" She nodded grimly. "We found tool markings. Same type of cutter used in fire rescue maintenance kits." My stomach twisted. Which Grant had access to. "And Blake," she added. "But Blake's been in custody since the memorial." This was someone else. Ryder's people? Possibly. Or someone higher who doesn't want this reaching politicians tied to insurance contracts. Every layer of truth bled into another. We hadn't uncovered rot. We'd just peeled the top layer. That night, sleep didn't come. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at Amelia's photograph, the one salvaged from a neighbor's phone. Her smile felt alive, reminding me why I couldn't quit now. Victor called just past midnight. "We've got movement. Grant's place. Lights on. Visitors in unmarked car. Feds. Too discreet for that. You might want to see for yourself." 15 minutes later, we parked down the block from Grant's house. A black SUV idled in his driveway. Two men stood by the porch, one holding a metal briefcase. Victor muttered, "Payoff or cleanup." Through the rain-fogged windshield, we saw Grant open the door. The briefcase exchanged hands. The men left fast. "If this is payoff money," Victor said, pulling his camera, "we can tie whoever sent it." We followed at a distance, keeping headlights off. The SUV drove towards city limits, straight to a private airstrip. Harper's contact traced its registration to an affiliate logistics vendor owned by none other than Deputy Commissioner Ryder's family trust. So even from jail, Ryder's shadow still reached far. Grant was receiving hush money to hold his tongue. We turned back toward the city as thunder rolled across the sky. The storm wasn't metaphor anymore. It was alive, pressing against glass, warning of something bigger. Next morning, news broke that Grant had been moved from county lockup to temporary witness protection due to threats. But Harper confirmed no such order existed. "They moved him under false credentials," she said. "Somebody's protecting their loose thread." We arranged another meeting with prosecutors, giving them footage of the late-night briefcase exchange. It forced an emergency warrant. A task force raided Grant's house that evening. Inside, they found what we expected and something we didn't. Hidden behind a vent was a charred phone with melted casing and data partially recoverable. It belonged to Amelia. Hours later, Harper called, voice shaking. We recovered 2 audio notes. She played one over the phone, static, coughing, then Amelia's voice, faint but clear. "You said you'd protect me, Grant. Please don't do this." The second file recorded muffled male voices, Grant and another man. Grant's words, "She's going to tell him everything. We don't have time." Then, a sound I'll never forget, a lighter flicking open. My knees buckled. I gripping the counter hard enough to hurt. Victor took the phone silently. The recording ended. "That's the final nail," he said. "You can't talk your way out of fire you started yourself." But this also changed what revenge meant. It wasn't about proving guilt anymore. It was about giving Amelia a voice that couldn't be silenced again. The Bureau released the tapes officially within 24 hours. News feeds erupted again. Every person who defended Grant turned quiet. Internet headlines changed from accident to intentional murder. By the next evening, Grant surrendered voluntarily. No deal, no plea, just exhaustion. I heard he spent hours staring at the wall before speaking. When pressed on the motive, he said one line that chilled everyone in that interrogation room. She said she was going to tell her husband. And I knew once she did, I'd lose everything. Harper relayed it to me word for word. That admission broke whatever illusion remained around his so-called remorse. A week later, Amelia's case reopened as premeditated homicide with departmental cover. Blake confessed fully, naming Ryder and 2 insurance officials who'd funded the delays. Charges stacked higher than rooftops. The city, once proud of its heroes, now turned sober. Streets lined with protesters demanding accountability. Firehouses repainted, badges replaced, code rewrites in progress. Victor and I watched it unfold from the same pier where we'd once planned everything. He collapsed his own empire, Victor said. Every secret burns eventually. I glanced at the horizon, gray sky splitting into sunlight. Fire took her. Truth brought the smoke down. But deep inside, part of me still waited, because endings never arrive where you expect. And when Harper called later that night, her tone told me the story wasn't over. Logan, you need to hear this. The audio's background. Remember that lighter flick? There's a second voice. Not Grant's. Older. Someone telling him what to do. I froze. You can isolate it? I already did, she said. And you won't believe who it is. When Harper said, "You won't believe who it is," I thought I'd misheard her. The storm outside muffled everything. Say it again, I told her. She hesitated. The second voice on that recording, it's not Ryder. It's the mayor. For a few seconds, neither of us breathed. She continued. Audio forensics confirmed tone match. Background file metadata places him within half a mile of the fire scene. Looks like he gave the order to cover the response delay personally, probably to keep campaign donations safe from the insurance backers. The truth didn't just reach the top, it started there. Victor drove over in silence after the call. Lightning flashed on the windshield, showing his jaw locked tight. You're telling me the same guy laying wreaths last week gave the green light to kill your wife? Not in those words, I said, but with the same results. Harper met us at the hangar with new evidence. Text fragments recovered from Ryder's cracked burner phone. Mayor in. Keep control. My donors can't see scandal this close to election. The pattern was clear. Grant executed. Blake concealed. Ryder financed. The mayor approved. Harper pushed the files toward me. If this leaks ahead of official verification, every department will implode. But wait too long, and evidence disappears. Victor leaned forward. Then we time it right. One last drop, same move as before. Use their own ceremony. The mayor had already scheduled a unity service for victims and first responders, televised citywide. Exactly 1 week away. Same platform, same cameras. He'd planned it as redemption. We would turn it into reckoning. The week crawled. Threats started again. Unmarked cars outside Harper's house. Dead phone lines. Even the bureau began backing off. Too political, they claimed. Victor shrugged when I told him. That means we're close enough to scare them. The night before the service, I visited the quiet patch of ground where Amelia's house had stood. Construction markers glowed pale under floodlight. I sat on the cold concrete step, the only piece left intact, and whispered, "Tomorrow ends it. I promise." Rain drifted faintly, carrying the same smell as that first night. Smoke, salt, regret. The next morning, sunlight broke through for the first time in months. The city square overflowed with people again. Reporters buzzed. The newscasters called it a day of reconciliation. I called it irony. Victor, Harper, and the veterans took their positions among the audience. Hidden mics, servers live, evidence queued. The mayor stepped up, flawless suit, easy smile. Every word oiled for performance. We endured loss, but we stand together stronger. Proof that courage survives through hardship. The crowd clapped. The sound made my stomach turn. When he paused to thank the brave men and women protecting this city, I signaled to Harper. She nodded once and tapped her tablet. The big screen behind him flickered mid-sentence. Image distortion. Then audio crackled through the speakers, the recovered phone recording. Amelia's voice, "Please don't do this." The entire plaza froze. Then, the deeper male voice, "You know what's at stake. End it before it reaches my office." Every microphone on stage broadcast those words. The mayor's face drained color. Harper played the isolated snippet again, digital waveform visual glowing behind him. Mayor N. The caption scrolled below in real time. Voice matched 96.8%. Panic hit. Security rushed forward. Reporters swarmed like bees. Victor moved through the crowd, speaking calmly into a wireless feed. "Multiple redundancies activated," he said. "This broadcast lives forever now." The mayor tried denying everything, yelling into the mic, "These are edited lies." But his own aide, trembling, stepped forward. "Sir, the routing logs show you called Ryder that night." The crowd turned. In that slow collapse of power, I saw something familiar, the same disbelief that once filled my own lungs watching Amelia burn. Police surrounded the dais within minutes. The mayor stumbled backward, still shouting about justice and misunderstanding, but his words drowned under the noise of the crowd chanting, "Truth, truth, truth." Later, inside the hangar, silence finally returned. The last upload finished at exactly 8:47 p.m. The servers displayed a green check, distributed to National Archives. Harper sank into a chair. "It's done," she whispered. "He's facing indictment. The city can't bury it anymore." Victor poured 2 cups of bitter coffee. "Congratulations, brother. You burned the system clean." I stared at Amelia's picture on the laptop monitor. For the first time, her face looked peaceful, not digital memory, but something real again. "What happens to the rest?" I asked quietly. "All the ones who lost somebody and never got answers." Harper looked up. Maybe this case gives them permission to ask. Outside, the air smelled different, raw, after-storm air. The kind that carries both ending and beginning. A week passed. Indictments rolled in. Grant accepted full responsibility, sentencing fast-tracked. Blake cooperated. Ryder turned state's witness. The mayor resigned, citing mental exhaustion. The dominoes that crushed my world finally stopped moving. One evening, I walked to the veterans' field where it all began. Same trucks parked, same faces, just older now, less angry. They weren't soldiers tonight, they were friends. Victor lifted a bottle toward the fire pit. "For her," he said. "For truth," another added. The flickering flames reflected in every pair of tired eyes. I said quietly, "Amelia wanted peace. She'd hate the noise this truth made." Victor smiled sadly. "Peace isn't silent, Logan. It just sounds different once you earn it." We sat until the embers dimmed, talking about nothing and everything. The things lost, the lessons learned, the strange way suffering opens rooms you never noticed before. When it grew late, the others drove off one by one, headlights vanishing down the dark road. Only Victor stayed behind. "What now?" he asked. I looked out across the empty field. "Maybe start over. Build again where she left off. No fire this time, just a home." He nodded. "You deserve that." I watched his taillights fade, then turned toward the horizon. The first light of dawn painted the sky soft gold, the same color as our old porch swing before everything turned black. I breathed deep. The air was clean. Amelia's voice still echoed sometimes, faint but kind of like wind through trees. "You told the truth." And beneath that whisper lived one certainty. Fires will always come, but now I knew how to stand inside their heat and not burn with them. The courtroom was silent, utterly, completely silent, when the verdict came down. Guilty on all counts. The sound of the judge's gavel cracked through the chamber like thunder splitting the sky. In that instant, months of nightmares, endless hearings, and smoke-filled memories finally turned into the one thing Amelia never got: justice. Grant didn't look up. His fingers clenched the table. Blake sat motionless, pale as if seeing his reflection for the first time and realizing what he had become. The prosecutor's voice faded beneath the murmurs of reporters. I couldn't hear the details anymore. The years, the fines, the reparations, none of it mattered. The only thing I heard was Amelia's last breath echoing in my memory, now answered by accountability. Harper squeezed my shoulder from the bench behind me. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She'd been with me from the moment this turned from a tragedy into a mission. When I stepped outside, the sunlight was warmer than I remembered. Not harsh, not blinding, just clean. People lined the courthouse steps, holding signs for reform, chanting Amelia's name. It wasn't grief anymore. It was gratitude. I didn't stop for cameras or interviews. I walked straight through them like smoke, certain of only one thing. The story was ending, but not the lesson. The letter, it was Harper who found it. A small, water-stained envelope hidden in a sealed evidence container from the firehouse logs. She found it weeks after the final trial ended. This belonged to her, Harper said softly, handing it to me outside a rebuilt memorial garden. Dated the morning of the fire. I thought you should be the one to open it. I turned the envelope over in my hands, my thumb tracing the faint cursive letters on the front. Logan. Her handwriting hit me like a heartbeat after months of stillness. I sat on the memorial bench, surrounded by the faint hum of construction, hammer strikes, footsteps, voices of workers rebuilding the new wall of heroes. Inside was a single folded page, words written in blue ink, delicate but steady. If you're reading this, I finally found the courage to tell you everything. I broke your trust, but never stopped loving you. You were the safe place I ruined, and I'm sorry for letting loneliness become betrayal. I thought what I felt for Grant was understanding, but it was guilt pretending to be comfort. Tonight, I'm ending it. I'll come home, and I'll tell you the truth face to face. If anything keeps me from it, please know I never meant to hurt you. You were always my compass. I only lost my way. Her signature trembled at the bottom, as if her hand had been shaking while she wrote. For a long time, I couldn't move. My lungs felt tight, the world unnaturally quiet. She had been coming back. She'd chosen me, truth, over everything else. That realization hit harder than any explosion of rage or joy I'd felt all year. Because now I knew this wasn't a story about betrayal anymore. It was about redemption that never got the chance to arrive. Amelia's law. When the city council passed Amelia's clause, Victor called me from the session. They did it, he said, voice breaking slightly. Automatic review for every residential fire. Independent investigators. Every record stored publicly. For once, government words sounded like hope. She just changed the system, I said quietly. No, Victor replied. You did. He was wrong. I didn't change anything. I just made people listen. That weekend, the city unveiled Amelia's memorial wall, etched steel polished like a mirror. Her name rested among those lost to tragedy, not as a statistic, but as the spark that exposed a hidden empire of lies. I brought the letter and tucked it behind the plaque, sealed within protective glass. It would stay there, weatherproof and visible, for anyone who needed to remember why truth matters. As I stood there, kids played nearby under a new mural. Bright colors, rising flames painted to look like wings. An older woman touched my arm. She saved lives she never met, she said. That was enough. Moving forward, I didn't rebuild the burned house. I couldn't. Instead, I bought a small cabin 2 hours north, near Lake Helena, a quiet, simple place with nothing left to fix except myself. The lake had that stillness only seen after storms, the kind that mirrors sky and thought together. Some nights I sat on the deck, reading Amelia's letter again while the wind rippled the water. It didn't hurt like before. It just reminded me of everything that was beautiful even inside pain. Houses can burn. Love can falter. But truth, Truth outlives the ashes if someone's brave enough to guard it. Victor visited once a month, usually bringing memories and laughter. Harper still called every week, updating me on the new team leading the department. No corruption, no shortcuts, just real work being done. And me? I finally slept through the night. No sirens, no screams, just rain against windows, the soft kind, the kind that forgives. The final visit a few months later, I returned to the memorial during autumn. Leaves brushed the ground like orange feathers. Someone had placed fresh white lilies beneath Amelia's name with a small note tied in ribbon. My breath caught reading it. You were right, Amelia. He did find the truth. No signature, just proof that wounds heal through quiet acts of remembering. I knelt, pressed the palm of my hand against her name, and whispered, "We did it. You and I. You brought light through the fire." I closed my eyes, and for a brief moment, I swore I could feel warmth again. Not heat, not pain, but warmth, the kind sunlight leaves on skin after rain. That's when I realized something. Grief isn't what stays. It's love that refuses to leave. And that's where our story ends. Not with revenge, not with punishment, but with peace built from ruin. I told you Amelia's story not to make you cry, but to remind you that even through betrayal, there's always a path back to truth, dignity, and calm. So before you scroll away, I'd love to know something from you. Backhand index pointing right, what kind of stories speak deepest to your heart? Do you love emotional betrayals that twist into redemption, quiet revenge that heals through justice, or powerful family dramas that make you feel every heartbeat? Tell me down in the comments. I read every one. And hey, if this story resonated with you, tap that like button gently, hit subscribe, and stay close, because our next story will be another thrilling, unpredictable, and deeply human revenge tale that I promise you'll never forget. Until then, take care of your heart, stand brave in your truth, and remember, some fires destroy, but some fires reveal who we truly are. We'll meet again soon in another cinematic story. Stay safe, stay honest, and keep your spirit burning calm.